weapons originally designed were supposed to be set, as you said in the opening, for armor. You know, the Soviets coming across the plains in Eastern Europe. But DU weapons are far more effective against a conventional wooden frame structure. They're more effective against anything. And so that's why we have all the different ones. And so in Iraq and Afghanistan, I mean, when you look at apartment houses and apartment buildings and houses and other hospital facilities and water treatment plants, sewage treatment facilities that are all shot up and burned out with radioactive contamination, you go, my God, why?
And we're seeing an exponential increase every year of the use of these weapons and the type of munitions they're in. And the troops need to know. You use DU weapons and you move into areas, because unlike a lead round or a steel round, and Doc, you can explain this, DU has such a high mass that when it hits, it goes through softer things, but once it hits a hard surface, it literally ignites. Correct, sir?
Well, first, let's get this clear. The DU round is on fire the minute it leaves the muzzle of the weapon, okay? It's on fire immediately, so it's shedding. Uranium rounds have an extremely high density, but they're very soft. So they shatter, they break up a lot. So we see 60 to 70% of it breaking up in mass, extremely fine.
So the troops are literally firing toxic waste radiation guns. I mean, you talk about Buck Rogers, Martians land, and they're firing radiation blocks. I mean, literally just, Darth Vader stormtroopers wouldn't be that stupid. I mean, they're literally firing radiation guns.
That's correct. And see, when I did the work at the Nevada test site in Mercury, Nevada, that's what I learned, what I found out. I mean, we're out there shooting everything. I was shooting up 4x4 chunks of wood. It was incredible. I was shooting up sand dunes. We're shooting up armor, shooting up everything. And what we learned and what we saw scared me. It scared us. And we had to do this to confirm and write, as you said, the Army regulations that govern how it's handled, how it's cleaned up, what you do, what are the medical requirements. And then it was totally ignored. And again, it comes down to it. We have a mindset in our nation now. We're attacking and destroying nations all over. We're killing and maiming and shooting everybody. And they've never attacked us. They've never done anything to us. And then we contaminate the air, water, and soil around them, make their food unusable. I mean, in the commentary...
But our own stormtroopers, I interrupted you. I want you to continue there, but go back to, you fire a 50 caliber rifle, let's just pick that weapon,
right,
with a DU round, what happens?
Well, take, for example, we had the U.S. Marines shot a 50 caliber DU round at the beginning of Iraqi freedom, and they destroyed an Abrams tank. Took everybody out inside of it and destroyed the tank. It was that simple. They destroyed an Abrams tank with a 50 caliber DU round, and got everybody inside, wounded, ill, sick. Just a nightmare. And it continues on. What I hear day in and day out from people that are being deployed have come back. They've gone into areas where DU has been used, or they're using it. They were not provided the training. They were not given the medical care. They're not given the procedures. It's 40 hours of training.
They're given a death sentence. I mean, it's a death sentence.
Correct, it is, but it's a death sentence, not only for our military, and you bring it on back to the families, because the contamination has absolutely been brought back to the states and cross-contaminated within the military bases and off-base. I personally want to confirm that personally by doing it for the Army. And then you get the spouses sick. I've had spouses that have sat right here at my table, 3 feet from where I am right now. They got cross-contaminated once the contamination came back with the same medical problems that I have. Absolutely identical.
Because it only takes a little bit.
The little bit, we're talking about nano amounts, amounts so small that you can't even see it. Because, see, the particulates, when this stuff is used, we're looking at extremely fine, smaller, less than a tenth of a micron. So there's no filtering that'll clean it up or take care of it or anything.
Stay there, Doc. We got to come back. This is amazing. Dr. Doug Rockey is our guest. Dr. DU in Fallujah. That's London Guardian. Huge rise in birth defects in Fallujah. Iraq, former battle zone, sees abnormal clusters of infant tumors and deformities. Yeah, that's from a year ago. This one's about a month ago. It's a new major study. 14 times. Cancer's increased 14 times in Fallujah. That should pull it up. But they know this. This is crimes against humanity that are off the chart. This is, from the studies I've seen, Doc, higher ratios than Hiroshima and Nagasaki. Why is DU so deadly?
Well, because of the incredible amount of quantities. We used 370 tons of solid radioactive materials during Desert Storm. And then, so we did, that's Desert Storm, Gulf War I. That's just in a few weeks, all right? And then in 93 and 94, we used another 35 tons in the Balkans, all right? And I wrote the procedures for that. We use it in Somalia. And as we're getting ready for the Somalia, we wrote and got out in October of 1993 what's called, that's the primary medical directive for providing medical care to anybody exposed to DU. And that required medical care being provided, the radio bioassay done within 24 hours of exposure. Within 24 hours of exposure, not weeks, months, years later. Because what we do know, and when we wrote the medical procedures and all this other stuff, is if you wait for 30 days after you're exposed to DU and do a radio bioassay, that's your analysis, what you will find with all the tests the military uses, either VA and the Army, they use the same lab, the same bad guys, it'll only be 1/1000th what's actually in the body. So they deliberately delay the testing so that there is no medical evidence of it. And then what's there, they say, well, this is dietary. Well, this is not dietary. If it's never been in the diet, it's never going to be in the diet. And so we have a total nightmare. We have just a mindset of, well, these are extraordinarily effective weapons against all known targets. So we're going to use them. We're not going to give the troops the training. We're not going to give them the regulations that are enforced. And what's real interesting, today, the general that signed the Army regulation, that signed the original orders, going back to 1993 and then in 2002, is now the Secretary of the U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs, General Eric Shinseki. My attempts to talk to him and his staff and get them to acknowledge and do what's required, and for him to even confirm that they need to comply with what he wrote, he signed as a mandatory directive, even though I wrote it, meets with total failure.
All right, I've got to apologize. For some reason, my mind failed me. It's not 14 times an increase in cancers and birth defects. It's 15 times. London Guardian, London Independent, AP. So it's 15 times. Sorry, folks. It's worse than I said. Toxic legacy of U.S. assault in Fallujah, worse than Hiroshima. The shocking rates of infant mortality and cancer in Iraqi city raise new questions about battle. No, they know. I mean, the doctors are telling them it's the DU. They knew this. I mean, it's like Satan runs our government.
Yeah, because you have to understand, what we're doing is about killing, destroying, and seizing property, terrain, and resources. And so anything that's effectively to do that, you're going to do it. And that's where I had to make the ethical and moral decision. What do I have to do? I tried within the system for years and years and years to get it done, to get it taken care of, to get compliance with the regulations, get the medical care, and it failed. Totally failed.
Well, I'll tell you this. America has got a lot of good people in it, but we make jokes about Iraq and, parking lot, turn them into a parking lot, glass parking lot, and people are so disconnected from reality. Of course the banks have stolen $28 trillion, according to Bloomberg. Of course they're setting up mobile X-ray vans that are going to end up killing the operators and the people they're hitting with them. Of course, it's the sky's the limit, doctor. If they get away with this and people make jokes about the dead and dying Iraqi children, like the one on screen, then, what's going to happen to us? The same thing. What does this say about what they think about the troops?
They don't care about the troops, but that's most effective. One of the things that scared me, and this all happened here in the last few weeks, medical care for the Department of Veteran Affairs is completely broken. The Department of Veteran Affairs totally acknowledges from Desert Storm there's 300,000 needing medical care. They thoroughly acknowledge over 500,000 from Vietnam. With the new rules, are going to add another 250,000. And they totally acknowledge in their own medical reports, and you've seen those, you have them, where it's over 500,000, 500,000 from Iraqi freedom, the current things alone, okay? And then back for a few, just again here a couple of weeks ago for September 11th, all right? The U.S. Department of Veteran Affairs decides to sponsor a race car in the September 11th Air National Guard race, okay, Air Guard 400 at Richmond, Virginia. $430,000 is what they pay to sponsor a race car. $430,000 to sponsor a race car. And myself and my team and my guys right here, just a handful of us, but we know we can't even get our prompt and effective medical care for ourselves, and we have to pay out of our pocket for our own surgery.
Well, let's go back.